Call the meeting to order and thank everybody for being here, and we're starting as quickly as we can. I would like to welcome everyone to meeting number 25, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Today we'll continue our study on the subject matter of the Supplementary Estimates A 2022-2023. Also, during the second hours of the meeting, we will begin consideration of our interim report for our study on the air defence procurement projects and our study of the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021, and members attending in the room in person are those here remotely via Zoom. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots and taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Recognizing that we have the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of recommendations of public health authorities as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following is recommended. That if you have symptoms, participate by Zoom, please, as opposed to being here in person. Those that are here in person should stay physically distanced wherever possible. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and is recommended in the strongest possible terms that members wear the mask at all times. And these are things I've told you all before, and so I know you're all aware of that. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting. I would like to welcome the Minister Tassi here today, and I would like to offer her an opportunity and invite her to offer her opening statements. Minister?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members, guests. It's nice to see you this afternoon. Let me begin by acknowledging that I'm participating from Hamilton, my hometown, which is situated on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. With me today from Shared Services Canada, President of Shared Services Canada, Sony Perron, Patrice Nadeau, Assistant Deputy Minister of Network Security and Services, Samantha Hazen, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, and with me from PSPC are my Deputy Minister, Paul Thompson, and Wojo Zilonka, the Chief Official Officer. I'm pleased to be here with you as Minister responsible for Shared Services Canada to discuss the organization's Supplementary Estimates A. Shared Services Canada, or SSC, is responsible for equipping public servants with the secure and reliable information technology infrastructure they need to support government operations. The work done at SSC also ensures that we can deliver digital programs and services to Canadians that are secure, reliable, and easy to use from anywhere. To support digital government, we need a high-performing and resilient enterprise network. That means moving away from individual department networks to a modern government-wide network. Mr. Chair, Shared Services Canada is responsible for managing the security and network infrastructure for its partner departments and clients. SSC is also responsible for securing the network perimeter and managing the government's secret infrastructure. That's 50 networks enabling digital communications for about 400,000 users nationally and internationally. SSC operates 336 data centers, including 4 enterprise data centers that provide secure, reliable hosting services for the Government of Canada applications and data. To ensure the safety and security of Canadians' data and the services provided by the Government of Canada, the information technology infrastructure must be safe from vulnerabilities and able to swiftly and effectively respond to cybersecurity attacks. We take cybersecurity very seriously. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility between Shared Services Canada, the Communications Security Establishment, referred to as CSE, and the Treasury Board Secretariat. Shared Services Canada is an integral part of the cybersecurity tripartite. On any given day, the Defensive Cyber System of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, a division of CSE, can block anywhere from as many as 3 to 7 billion actions targeting Government of Canada networks. When it comes to government IT solutions, our government is looking for greater flexibility, mobility, and efficiency. That means developing networks that are accessible anytime, anywhere, by anyone on a trusted and secure platform. With this in mind, SSC is providing the key building blocks for the adoption of cloud computing. Moving government services and operations to cloud-based services and cross-government data centers will reduce the risk of major IT failure, as well as ensuring safe and efficient services. The improved efficiencies will save taxpayers money, as well as reduce the Government of Canada's carbon footprint. When it comes to directing the traffic on the network itself, SSC is looking to use software-defined networking technology, as well as artificial intelligence to get better network performance and monitoring. To support these key network modernization activities, SSC is requesting through Supplementary Estimates A an increase to the reference levels by $86 million for a total of $2.7 billion. SSC will invest this additional funding in information technology services so that the Government of Canada can leverage new technologies and approaches to security for continued support to existing as well as new government programs and services for Canadians. Thank you again for the invitation to join you today, and I am pleased to answer questions related to the Supplementary Estimates A for Shared Services Canada. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. And we'll now go into questions, and we will start with Mr. McCauley for 6 minutes.
Great, Minister. Thanks for joining us today and your colleagues. I want to just start with some of the issues you brought up on the Committee of the Whole about contracts for companies that are linked to forced labor in China. There's a couple of them, and these are actual contracts that have been granted by the government through shared services. We've found them on the proactive disclosure. Toshiba, for example, HP, Hitachi. What is the government doing to end contracts with companies that are linked to using forced labor in China? And this is information that comes directly from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. So this is public information. So what are we doing to end this?
So thanks for that question. It's an important question, and I want to assure you that our government is taking action in this regard. As you know, there are 4 ministers that have mandates with respect to the ratification of forced labor and supply chains, eradicating
sorry,
forced labor.
Minister, let me interrupt you,
so
though.
With respect
Minister,
to,
please
yes,
let me interrupt you.
MP McCauley, yes.
I appreciate that, and I'm aware of that. We started out, this a couple of years ago with our very weak rules, but these are companies that have been publicly identified. So what are we doing to end the contracting of these companies? It's not enough for us to just read off from a booklet of our rules that don't seem to be working. These are companies that are using the forced labor, and it's been identified by our allies. And yet we are granting them contracts. So what are we concretely doing to end this practice?
So first of all, I was delighted to see that there was unanimous support for Bill S211. With respect to the actions that we have taken, PSPC has actually taken action in this regard, as I did outline in Committee of the Whole. We have a code of conduct now that applies with respect to procurement. We have contracts that have clauses in there that require that the provider of the goods are not involved in any way with forced labor involvement, so that
let me interrupt you, Minister. Let me interrupt you again. These are companies clearly identified by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. These aren't just pulled out of the air. Will you say today that we will not continue to procure items, as Shared Services has, from the companies identified by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute?
What I will say is that we take forced labor allegations very seriously. When in fact those allegations are made, there is due diligence investigations to determine whether in fact there is forced labor that is taking place. And so we are going to continue to work very hard to eradicate forced labor from our supply chains. We did expand the CUSMA obligations to all imports that are coming in. So there's absolutely work that we have done. But I will say that we look forward to doing more, because more does need to be done. And I think that that's the point that you're making. I would agree with that. More work needs to be done.
Minister, what I'm trying to get at is I've identified companies that are knowingly using supply chains or directly using forced labor. I'm not asking for we'll work harder on it. These are companies identified publicly. Will your department commit today to end the purchases from this? Follow-up question. Follow-up question. We've given $1 million of contracts to Lenovo, formerly which was owned by IBM, now owned out of China. The U.S. Defense Department has stated they are considered a major security risk, but Shared Services is buying equipment from them. Will you commit to having your Shared Services and purchases of companies identified by our allies, the U.S. Defense Department, as security risks?
So again, what I would say, MP McCauley, is that we take the allegations of forced labor very seriously. I would like to turn it over to my officials to say what they implement when in fact those allegations are made. And if allegations are made and warranted, then of course we follow up with those and pursue them to ensure that we will eradicate forced labor from the supply chain. And I'm happy to be working with the Minister of Labor in this regard. But I would turn it over to my officials because you're making direct accusations with respect to contracts. So I think it's important that they provide input with respect to the contracts you're mentioning.
I'm going to interrupt you there. These are not accusations. These come straight from proactive disclosure from the PSPC website. These are not accusations. It's offensive that you would try and push such a serious issue away as an accusation. These come straight from your department's website. Now, before we go over to one of your witnesses, I would like to hear what they are going to do physically if they will investigate, look at the simple website of the Strategic Policy Institute of companies named using forced labor or Uyghur labor, and the practice of sending taxpayers' money to companies that are doing this reprehensible practice.
So before going over to my officials, let me just clarify. When I'm saying accusations, I'm saying you're making the accusation that there is forced labor in the contracts that we have.
I was referring specifically to Lenovo.
Accusations. So let me transfer it over to my officials to give specifics with respect to the information that they have received in this regard, because I know when those accusations are made, we take it very seriously, because I want to assure you that our government is committed to eradicating forced labor in our supply chains. But over to my officials.
Thank you, Minister. And unfortunately, we're out of time. So if your officials would be able to provide that in writing to committee and send that to the clerk, we will distribute that to the members. We'll now go to Mr. Johari for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, welcome, Minister, and thank you for joining us today along with your officials. Minister, I'm going to focus my questions to you on a topic that you highlighted in your opening remarks around cybersecurity. Minister, my understanding is Shared Services Canada has to work hand in glove with Commission's Communication Security Establishment Canada and the Department of National Defence to ensure that the Government of Canada's network are secure and protected against increasing malicious and frequent cyber threat. Can you kindly clarify the role of SCC in the Government of Canada's effort to ensure our cyber defense is secured? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Johari. So let me begin by saying that Shared Services Canada works to keep our networks safe, secure, and accessible for Canadians. SSC supports the effective design, delivery, and management of priority IT security initiatives affecting government systems and government-wide operations. Cybersecurity is, of course, a shared responsibility. It's a tripartite responsibility or arrangement between Shared Services Canada, the Communications Security Establishment, and the Treasury Board Secretariat. SSC, of course, continuously works to enhance the cybersecurity of Government of Canada digital assets by preparing for all types of cybersecurity incidents and for responses to threats. SSC is constantly working alongside its partners, including the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, to identify potential vulnerabilities and enhance protective measures. When a cybersecurity issue arises, SSC and its partners coordinate to determine root causes, limit impact, and undertake recovery. We know that this is an important area, that there is gaining expertise in terms of of those that are hacking and getting into systems. So Shared Services Canada is working very hard with its partners to ensure that our systems are protected.
Thank you, Minister. I'm going to move on to the digital privacy part of the cybersecurity. Minister, as you and I know, we live in an ever-growing digital world where Canadians rely on digital services provided by their governments. Along with this reliance come concerns about the protection of privacy and increased cybersecurity challenges. Can you please share with us what the government is doing to protect Canadians in their and their personal data? And further, can you tell us what impact investment in cyber defense at SSC will have in the future?
Well, thank you for raising this issue. We know it's an important one to Canadians. Ongoing investments have been and will continue to be made in cyber IT security to deliver enterprise services and solutions for the Government of Canada. As we grow more dependent on digital systems, the potential consequences of cyber incidents continue to increase, and Canada needs to be ready. Similarly, for the Government of Canada endpoints, the Endpoint Visibility and Awareness Project will allow SSC partners, clients, and enterprise service organizations to ensure endpoints on SSC government networks and properly identified, tracked, managed, and secured. So the security enhancements that these types of projects bring to the IT infrastructure reduce the threat landscape and attack surface, thereby reducing the risk to government data. SSC is also investing in the delivery of the cyber and IT solutions in support of the government's digital vision to move towards a zero trust framework. Based on the premise that don't trust but verify, zero trust architecture is a security framework that protects data flow between the user and the device or application through continuous monitoring, which consists of applying behavioral analytics and other oversight monitoring to each access decision-making point to ensure full compliance with established security requirements. And then also in 2018, the government launched the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which is working to keep Canadians safe from evolving cybersecurity threats that target Canadians and Canadian businesses and our critical infrastructure. And then finally, in Budget 2022, we propose to provide approximately $875 million over 5 years, beginning in 2022-23, and approximately $238 million ongoing for additional measures to address the rapidly evolving cybersecurity threat landscape.
Thank you, Minister. Quickly moving into cyber attack responses. Minister, as I'm sure you're aware, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of the parliamentarian published a special report on February 14th of this year focused on the issues of defending Government of Canada's system and networks from cyber attack. There are a number of calls made in this report around cybersecurity and recommended next steps. What kind of investment can our government point to as it relates to addressing the issues raised?
How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
30 seconds.
Okay, so I think it's important to note that Shared Services Canada is committed to protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of digital services to Canadians. It is also important to note that a number of small departments and agencies recommended in the report don't fall under SSC umbrella, but in Budget 2022, it was announced that SSC and CSC would be allocated approximately $178 million over 5 years, allocated to SSC and Communication Security Establishment, starting in 2022-23 to expand cybersecurity protection for small departments, agencies, and Crown corporations to provide them with the most secure and cost-effective solutions to meet the needs and expectations of digital government.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for extra time.
Thank you. And thank you. We will now go, and it's good to see Mrs. Vignola back. Yeah. So we'll go to Mrs. Vignola for 6 minutes. You're on mute. There you go.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Désolé.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I had some trouble with my computer. Madam Minister, You talked about the seriousness with which cyber attacks are taken, and it's something you've just stated as well. You also said that the government would like greater flexibility, greater mobility when coming up with IT solutions, while trying to develop networks that are accessible everywhere by everyone on a safe platform. But if a safe platform is accessible to everyone, it means it could also be accessible to people who could attack it. Where are most cyber attacks coming from? The cyber attacks in Canada?
Okay, thank you, MP Vignola, and it is good to see you, and I hope that you're feeling better and happy that you've made it to today's meeting. I would just reaffirm that cybersecurity is important to our government. We know that we want to have the protection that's needed. That's a very specific question that I would like to ask my officials to respond to with respect to the nature of the greatest area of attack.
Monsieur le Président, la question.
Mr. Chair, the question being asked comes back to what the minister said before. So cybersecurity in the Government of Canada is a partnership, and our colleagues at the Cybersecurity Center have the responsibility to monitor what is happening outside and to inform us of any risks and vulnerabilities that we are facing. So at SSC, it's difficult for us to tell you the source of the attacks. We start working only when it attacks our environment. Perfect. Thank you. Amongst the cyber attacks, was Canada targeted by ransomware? To my knowledge, with the services we provide, I'm not aware of any organizations that were directly targeted. Thank you very much. Does the government use professional hackers to test the resistance of our network and software to protect the private data of Canadians, enterprises, and also sensitive information belonging to the government? At SSC, we do not use such services. We have our own internal resources that check our networks and our equipment, but we do not deal with the types of services that you mentioned. Thank you. Madam Minister, the supplementary budget asks for $86 million from the main estimates for SSC. Amongst the new approaches for security, what justifies the $86 million? Can we hire professional hackers to once again test the security of our professional equipment? Mr. Chair, may I answer that question? No, that's not part of the activities that are provided for the $86 million that are mentioned for the supplementary estimates. Thank you. Madam Minister, on page 232 of the budget supplementary estimates, SSC is asking for $40 million under Vote 1, operating cost, and some more money under the capital expenses. And this money is asked for modernizing the network. What is included when you talk about modernization of the network? Are you talking about physical infrastructure?
So merci pour cette question.
Thank you very much for your question.
Will enable a digital-ready network that's critical to supporting the digital government as well as network utility. So it's going to meet the increasing demand for higher bandwidth for users, reduce single points of failure, promote readiness to adopt emerging technology in response to persistent digital demand. So it will ensure that SSC can deliver responsive networks, modern network services that support government operations. And we know that there, of course, has been an increase since COVID-19, the demands with respect to the platforms and the programs that have been provided. So we want to ensure that we have the supports so that these can continue to be provided.
Merci.
Thank you. Over the last 10 years, hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested to modernize the network. how many tens of thousands of additional dollars will be needed for the network to become finally modernized and maybe only require upgrades instead of a total overhaul?
Well, what I would say in response to that is this is of course an ongoing goal. We always want to make sure that we have up-to-date systems that are going to meet the needs of government. And but with respect to specifics on an end date and timeline, I would hand it over to my officials.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Monsieur.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Mr. Chair, to respond to the question, we don't really have an answer. We will never stop modernizing our networks. There are new requests, new expectations, and new requirements. Make what is asked today different from what was asked 50 years ago and what will be asked in 5 years. So we need to continuously modernize our defenses, to refresh them, to standardize our infrastructure for it to become more reliable. And this is something that will never end. There will be new projects, new initiatives. We are trying to remain connected with future infrastructure. Like for cloud computing, these are just the first years and things may change. So unfortunately, I cannot give you an end date. It's work that we'll continue doing on this topic.
Mr. Johns for 6 minutes.
Minister, for being here today. And Minister, part of what we're talking about today in the supplementary estimates is $26 million for the Privy Council Office. And I know last year the Privy Council Office paid for polling about possible service cuts at Canada Post. Is some of this money going to be used for polling at the Privy Council Office? And are you going to be doing polling regarding how you're going to, your strategies to address the toxic drug crisis, such as decriminalization?
So thanks, MP Johns, for those questions. Let me say, just to clarify on the polling piece with respect to Canada Post, because I know this was a concern for you, and you've raised it and voiced that concern. The polling is done really to get a sense of what Canadians feel the service that they need from Canada Post is. We want to ensure, and I particularly as a minister responsible for Canada Post, to ensure that the services that are most valued to Canadians are being provided to Canadians. So that information piece is important because it'll help support the initiatives and measures that we put in place as we move forward. And I will say that I will commit to work with Canada Post to get to a point where they are self-sustaining. But with respect to the specific question, I would put that to my officials in terms of of any dollars.
I want to be assured, Minister, that in terms of ethics, you're not doing polling to make policy from the Privy Council Office with taxpayers' dollars on really important decisions. I'm going to go to remote work. Is there any funding in the supplemental estimates intended to facilitate public servants working from home? And has the department conducted an analysis of how continued remote work may generate cost savings or emission reductions? And I guess lastly, in the same question, is the department exploring whether continued remote work may increase the supply of surplus federal properties that could be made available to meet some of the housing demands and needs that we have right now in our communities?
Mm-hmm. Excellent questions. Thank you for those. So with respect to SSC, what I would say is that they continue to work with partners to implement the technology and network upgrades necessary to enable effective communication and collaboration tools for government employees. And I do want to take this time to commend them. We had to turn this around in very short order, and I just want to thank all the officials who worked very hard. Right now, it's we are continuing to make significant upgrades to networks and boardrooms to enable employees to collaborate from work sites so that their remote colleagues will be able to have the bandwidth so that we can have, the intensive video conferencing tools. So this is to support the hybrid model. We know that the return to work is going to be different. What we're hearing is that with return to work, there is some preference for some form of remote work. So we are working and keeping a close eye on this and monitoring the situation. And with respect to your last question, part of the question, which I think is a very important one. Yes, we will continue to monitor the sites that we have, determine what the future workforce is going to look like, and if there's any room for efficiency, if there's room for us to turn properties, for example, to use properties for affordable housing projects, we will closely take a look at that because it's an important priority for our government.
You know, it is an urgent situation for housing throughout our country, especially here in the nation's capital. Minister, in this year's budget, the government announced a strategic policy review of the public service, hoping to find billions of dollars in savings. Your colleague, the president of the Treasury Board, said this review is meant to make the government smarter, not smaller. Meanwhile, public servants are being offered wage increases that don't keep up with inflation, which would amount to a pay cut. Is the government looking for savings on the backs of public servants? And I must say that the Parliamentary Secretary for Tourism and the Associate Minister of Finance just cited in the House of Commons this morning that Canadians are seeing an average wage increase of 4%. And is that something you're looking at for the public service, of giving a wage increase of 4%?
Okay, so thanks for that question. I would say that this is not my responsibility. It's not. This is not my file. President of the Treasury Board, it's more in her responsibility. And in terms of from the
there is still sorry, Minister, there is thousands of people that do fall under your ministry, of your department. Sorry, and I just want to ensure that you're going to ensure that those employees are going to be able to pay their bills given the increase in inflation. And do you, I guess the question to you is, do you believe public servants deserve wage increases that account for the rising cost of living?
I think that employees deserve to be paid fairly. And I've been an advocate for workers my entire life. And so, you know, they have opportunities to negotiate collective agreements where terms of the contracts are made clear. And they can advocate for increases in those negotiations. But I am a strong believer that workers should be paid fairly for the work that they do.
How much time, Mr. Chair?
You have 5 seconds.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Lobb for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And I'll note Gord Johns had 5 seconds to mention dry docks, and he missed out on his opportunity there. So maybe next meeting. My first question to the minister, it's really in regards to Block 2 on Wellington Street. And I wondered if she'd be open to answering a question on that today.
Mr. Chair, is that, am I permitted to? Yeah. Sure. So I did not prepare for that for today, but of course, Mr. MP Lobb, go ahead and present your question.
Okay, the thing I was just curious about, my staff and I stopped in the center the other day on Spark Street. We're looking around, and the thing that I think we need more clarification on in Parliament is the announcement says they're going to increase the number of office spaces by 150 offices. And I would have thought we'd already had enough offices for our area. So you did mention residents and housing, and I'm not talking about MPs, but just the need for housing in this area. So how do you justify all those increased offices when it seems to me we have plenty with Wellington and Valor and East Block and West Block and on and on and on? Just curious if you could answer that.
And Minister, before I, and I appreciate and thank you very much for offering to answer that. And if you feel comfortable answering that question, by all means, we greatly appreciate it. If not, we will move forward. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'll do my best. As I said, not prepared for this specific appearance, but happy to respond. So the first and foremost, what I would say is that this, the planning of this is a part of the long-term vision and plan for the parliamentary and judicial precincts. There is a lot of engagement with senators as well. So, and I know that my officials could comment and give more specifics with respect to the details of that, but I could tell you that there were many in-depth discussions with respect to how we can best use this space in the most efficient manner. And there were high asks in this regard in terms of the space that would be used. But it was as a result of those discussions that final decisions were made, and I know many discussions took place. I know that my official would be able to expand a little bit on that in more depth, but that official is not with us today, but I would be happy to have him respond.
Fair enough. No, that's good. Thank you. In regards to cloud computing versus data centers, and just on cloud computing right now, is it a fair and open competition for hosting? Because I have a lot of meetings with different suppliers and vendors that feel like it's skewed towards Microsoft. And I just wondered if there's anything you can clear up on that front, because I do have a lot of meetings that occur in my office because they're feeling it's biased towards Microsoft.
Okay, so what I would say in response to that, MP Lab, is we always, wherever possible, we want to have competitive processes in place. We know that when we can have competitive processes in place, we are going to get the best value because of the competition. That's what competition breeds. It breeds bidders to bring in the best price that they can because they know that they're competing for the job. But I would say there's some instances where we are not able to do that because, for example, the systems we have, there isn't compatibility in order to allow that. But that, I think I would turn over to my officials because you've given specifics and that they could respond to the specifics that you've cited.
Mr. Chair, we have a broking services at Shared Service Canada that qualified aid cloud service provider based on their ability to meet security requirement. They were qualified back in 2018. Out of the 8, the department that needs to access cloud services for protected B workload have to compete among them as soon as they pass over a certain threshold. And some activities will consume over time a lot of space and cost. So they have to go through a competitive process among the vendors that have qualified. You mentioned Microsoft. We have other vendors like IBM, Salesforce, ThinkOn that are on this. You're right, MP Loeb, though, that right now, among all the vendors, Microsoft is the one that have received the most demand so far. But this is, as for most of it, as a result of a competition among the qualified vendor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Loeb. We'll now go to Mr. Kuzmierczuk for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, again, for your excellent testimony here today, and thank you so much for being part of the AUGO committee. Minister, as was mentioned previously, the question of the workplace and the future of work really is, we know that it's at the top of mind for many businesses, governments, it's at the top of mind for communities across Canada, really is across the globe as well. And how the federal public service here in Canada will respond to these challenges is, of course, equally of interest as well, too. There are some operational needs that have to be addressed and have to be met. However, the future of work as a hybrid of in-office and from home, we know that is the likely reality that we are facing, the new reality today. Can you provide insights into how the Government of Canada's network bandwidth will handle this surge of large amount of public servants returning to their physical offices?
Yes, thank you, MP Kuzmierczuk, for that. There is work that is ongoing also with respect to ensuring that the space that is used efficiently. And so shared space, for example, but I think you're speaking more about the technological piece. And so what I would say is that SSC is working with its partners to implement the technology and network upgrades needed so that their return to workplace strategies will be effective and work very well. Based on the department's prioritization of buildings, SSC is making significant upgrades to 35 government networks and boardrooms to enable employees to collaborate from work sites and their remote colleagues, as well as support the bandwidth-intensive video conferencing tools like Microsoft Teams. And so this work is ongoing. We want to be preparing for the future and ensure that as workers come back to work, more workers come back to work, that those supports are there so that they can get the work done and do that in a way that provides the technological support that is needed to do it.
Thank you very much for that response, Minister. And of course, we know during the pandemic there was a wave of public servants, federal public servants, that migrated from in-person work to remote work, while keeping at the same time the work of government moving forward. And really, this was a Herculean task that was undertaken. I know that it was incredibly important for residents of Windsor-Tecumseh in my riding to know that even though this migration happened, that the services were still being offered and the programs that were being undertaken were still functioning sort of as normal. And again, this was an incredible task, and I just wanted to compliment all the folks at SCC for that incredible work. But can you outline for us, in short, how SSC supported those public servants that were working remotely throughout the pandemic?
Yes, thanks for that question. And I totally agree with you. I mean, it goes back to the comment that I made previously. I think that the work that was undertaken overnight in order to provide the supports necessary so that the government could continue with its work and employees could continue working remotely it was just absolutely fantastic. And I know it was tireless work effort that was made on behalf of SSC, and I join you in congratulating them and thanking them for turning that around so quickly. Shared Services Canada provided the Government of Canada partners in the support that they needed to enable effective, seamless remote work so that they could continue serving Canadians, because we know that there was a lot at stake there, right? If the work would stop, Canadians would be impacted across this country, and it would be difficult. So to enable virtual work, SSC quickly implemented major upgrades to the enterprise network, government-wide internet and network security, and has continued to provide improved collaboration tools such as Microsoft 365. And I know that they continue to monitor this. They are constantly monitoring the situation to determine, okay, what are we going to need? Because we don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. And again, I thank them for the work that they have done in this regard.
Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
1 second. Oh, there goes the bell. I will now go to Mrs. Vignola for 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Minister, for the next question, I would like a written answer. $18 million is being requested to support the investigation into the emergency measures, and more than $7 million is being requested to support management and preparation for the emergency situation and to improve departmental capacities. Personally, I think that's a lot of money, $19 million to support investigations without including the cost of the investigation. What does this support represent? What are the actions? And then $7 million is being requested to support preparation for the emergency situation and to improve departmental capacities. And here we are not even talking about the preparation itself, nor management, nor response to the emergency situation. What actions are being taken? $7 million. We have not even started to respond to the emergency situation. I find that a lot of money. Why $7 million? When we are talking about improving departmental capacities, what capacities are we talking about it? What department are we talking about? And what portion of the $7 million will go towards improving departmental capacities? And why do we need to improve departmental capacities? And how will the money be used to improve those capacities? And those are the questions I have. Money that has to be used without even doing anything concretely. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to provide MP Vignola with written responses to that subsequent to this. My team to provide written responses to MP Vignola after this appearance.
Thank you, Minister. And we have roughly about 30 seconds left. If you did want to say quickly or just, I appreciate you providing the written responses. And
yes.
if you've got 30 seconds, if you'd like to add to that.
Okay, what I would do is I would actually just ask my officials if they had anything specifically that they wish to add.
In 20 seconds.
I would say from Shared Service Canada perspective, we appreciate the time that the committee is spending trying to understand the complexity of our operation and what we are doing. So it's always a pleasure to appear in front of you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to the written response to that question. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes.
Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. Again, the Auditor General's spring reports found persistent challenges to implementing gender-based analysis plus since 2015. Specifically, it found that Privy Council Office and the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat didn't share information with Women and Gender Equality Canada that would help it to monitor progress on implementation over time. Is any of the funding requested by the Privy Council Office intended to support improving the implementation of the Gender-Based Analysis Plus?
Again, Mr. Johns, I don't believe that this is my file, but happy to have my team follow up with you after this and provide an answer to that.
Forward to that. Shared Services Canada is requesting $60.7 million for network modernization. Would any of this funding support greening government strategy initiatives with respect to SSC's data centers or operations?
So I'm pleased that you have asked that question because in terms of the greening government and the opportunities at SSC, we do have opportunities here and we are taking those opportunities seriously. We know that we as a government want to show leadership in this regard, and we are, willing and able to do that. In terms of, I will hand it over to my officials with respect to the specific question, but happy to talk about other things that we are doing in PSPC with respect to the greening government. But I would hand it over to my officials to give a specific answer to with respect to the dollar value.
If it can be quick, because I do have one more question.
Yeah, the fund, the $60 million, and I would say all the budget at SSC is taking into consideration opportunities to reduce gas emission. We are going towards certification for our data center, eliminating legacy infrastructure that is using energy not efficiently. So I don't know if Patrice Nadeau or ADM Network can add specific example under the $60 million that can produce the result that the MP is asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question.
Minister, earlier this week I wrote to you about the review of federal vaccine mandates, which have been underway since March. Some of my constituents are postal workers who have been placed on leave because of the mandates, Canada Post, and they're eager to return to work. We know the Americans lifted a number of mandates today. Can you please advise us of the status of the review and when a decision will finally be communicated to the public and to postal workers?
Thank you, Mr. Johns. And unfortunately, 2.5 minutes goes by very quickly. It is an excellent question, but I would ask that if the minister could provide an answer to that in writing, but we have to move on. We'll now go to Mr. Lobb for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question I have, it's in regards to licenses for software, et cetera. Are there licenses for which we're paying for on an annual basis that we actually don't even use the software?
So thanks for the question, MP Lobb. I would have to pass that to my officials.
This is an exercise that we need to do in ongoing basis. Some licenses have been procured at time, and they may not be the one we need anymore. So we have to keep hygiene around the using of a license. I think it's an excellent question. This is part of managing a complex IT infrastructure, is really make sure we are using what we have procured, and we are revamping our arrangement with the vendor if we don't need these licenses anymore. Maybe Mr. Nadeau will have specific example in his area where he's keeping this under control.
Okay, and I'll just add to if Mr. Nadeau is going to answer this question, because in addition to the meetings I get in regards to the cloud, I also have a large number of meetings for vendors who believe that there's other providers out there for which the government is paying them licenses for which none of the software is being used and has never been used. So, Mr. Nadeau, we know it's happening, and so tell us, is this happening widespread? And approximately how many dollars per year is the government spending on licenses for which we don't use the software?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. In terms of, I guess, wide use of that, I don't think so. It is difficult for me to answer, but from a network point of view, this is minimum. Sometimes what could happen there is that as part of a software, a package, there's multiple options, so we might not be taking advantage of every single option that we pay for, but whatever the license is for specifically, that would be consumed. But in terms of answering on behalf of the GC, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to do that.
Is there a way that you have the ability to track this, so that, say, for example, this committee would be satisfied to know a certain percentage, or how do we'll take your word for it, but is there a way that you track it or your staff track it, that we could have the knowledge that this isn't a widespread problem?
Thank you for the question. We could probably track it by department. Unfortunately, we do not have many of those licenses would be consumed by various federal departments. And at that point, we would purchase on their behalf the actual use of those licenses. We would have to go back to the various departments.
Okay. Do you know roughly how many Microsoft licenses we would have that would use the Teams and 365? How many would we have approximately in the government of Canada?
Maybe this one I will take it, Mr. Chair. So we have a multi-year arrangement with Microsoft for an enterprise license that gave us, I think if I remember well, 400,000 license for the whole public service. So we don't have license by department. We manage this on behalf of the government. It's a 10-year agreement with Microsoft that have allowed us to roll out Teams, but also a series of other elements, including email. To all the public service. So it's a common service, core basic services for all the GOC.
How many did you mention that you have?
I think if I remember well, it's 400,000 that we have. Maybe I could come back on the specific number. I don't have the detail of the agreement in front of me.
Okay, and just, I'm probably running out of time here, but just help the committee understand here. When you go from, say, WebEx or Zoom to Microsoft Teams, or, in Parliament we use Zoom, how does that happen? So if you're using WebEx, you move to Teams, or you had Teams and you move to Zoom. How does that happen in behind the scenes with shared services?
I'm not sure I understand really the question about movement. Is it the technical side or the selection of the vendor?
I think historically WebEx was used, and then during COVID, it switched to Teams. So I'm just curious. I'm not asking it on behalf of Cisco. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, how does that happen?
So we were rolling out the M365 suites before the pandemic. We have accelerated, and this was as a result of the study of the various products that were available to create an enterprise license and negotiation that have happened. So there is a couple of products on the market that provide that suite of product. This happened a couple of years ago, where the selection was going with a multi-year agreement with one vendor, which was Microsoft. So there is some places where some products are being used, like you mentioned, the House of Commons. The House of Commons is not a mandatory client for Shared Service Canada, so they were at liberty to choose a different product. But for other departments that are mandatory clients for Shared Service Canada, everybody's using the enterprise solution that at the time was selected as being M365.
Thank you, and now we'll go to Mrs. Thompson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for coming today with your team. I'd like to begin with a question on Supplementary Estimates A. And this indicates that SSC will receive additional funding for core information technology services. Minister, can you clarify what this entails and how this impacts either the services accessed directly by Canadians when interacting with the Government of Canada or public servants in their work providing program support and services to Canadians?
Thank you, MP Thompson, for that question. The federal budget 2021 proposed the following assessment of past funding levels and associated cost. The Department of Finance directed this access funding to support two items. So onboarding of 4% new or renewed government full-time equivalents, FTEs, to cover certain ongoing core IT service costs. And then for direct costs in support of two partner-led initiatives, providing standardized network services, software and hardware for workplace technology devices, and technology-related services. This funding ensures that the public servants have the tools they need to serve Canadians, especially during the period where most public servants are working remotely. Having the IT equipment and services they need makes it possible for them to continue offering the services on which Canadians depend, which I've mentioned previously, and processing the numerous requests that come in across government. So really critical that those services and supports continue to be offered. The majority of this funding supports the onboarding of new employees into the federal public service. It ensures they have access to the IT services they require to do their work, including, for example, access to mobile devices, email, and telecommunication services. So that's a breakdown in response to your question.
Thank you. And Minister, like you, my team and constituents were deeply impacted by the broad impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, and certainly that was in all aspects of life. And I realize this was referenced earlier, but I'd like to just be a little more specific in my question. Government services and programs existing in new continue throughout the pandemic to serve Canadians. And because public servants across the board were able to work remotely and to continue to be there to serve Canadians, I want to absolutely recognize their invaluable contribution and the accomplishments of the SSC public servants in overcoming unprecedented technical challenges. I think it was really quite remarkable what was able to happen in a very short period of time. And this highlights that the modern workplace will be a hybrid workplace, and I realize that was referenced earlier. And this workplace will be one where IT capacity not only allows for but encourages a broader cross-section of Canadians to pursue careers in the public service without having to pull up stakes and move to Ottawa. Minister, how will the investment and learnings of the pandemic contribute to the modernization of workspaces and services and programs and program delivery for the Government of Canada?
Well, thanks, MP Thompson, for that, and thanks for acknowledging the work of Shared Services Canada, and I agree with you completely with your comments. So I think it's important to understand the magnitude. We've talked about the work that has been done, the pivot that overnight that we had to transform systems, make it so that the work could continue to be done. But to give a sense of the magnitude of this or the scale, prior to the pandemic, there was an average of 20,000 simultaneous remote connections. And that's daily. During the pandemic, we've seen the daily average exceeding 240,000 simultaneous remote connections during the first year. Based on the last 6 months, the average remote connections have now stabilized around 230,000. So to enable virtual work, SC moved very quickly, implemented major upgrades to the enterprise network, government-wide internet and network security, and enabled the deployment across the enterprise of digital communication and collaboration platforms enabled by Microsoft 365. But this was key to employees' ability to collaborate remotely in support of critical services to citizens. This platform further improved the Government of Canada's ability to support the accessibility and official language needs. So now SSC continues to make significant upgrades to networks and boardrooms, as I have mentioned, to enable employees to collaborate from work sites with their remote colleagues, as well as support the bandwidth intensive video conferencing tools. So this is going to support the return to work site, which a number of people have asked about, and enable a hybrid workforce, as well as prepare the foundational infrastructure and platforms that will modernize program and service delivery to Canadians for the future.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we've come to the end of our hour, and we greatly appreciate you being with us and answering questions, and being so open to answer them where available. As indicated, if there are further responses that you would like and that need to be done in writing, if you would submit that to the clerk, then he will distribute that to all members. And with that, I would like to thank Mr. Perron and Mr. Nadeau for your remarks as well. And finally, to you, Minister, again, thank you once again for being with us. This ends our public portion of the meeting, and we will now be going in camera for our in-camera portion of the meeting. As you are aware, you will have to leave the site you're on Zoom site you're on right now, and then come back in. The Zoom instructions were provided to all committee members in advance, and so with that, I'm going to suspend the meeting temporarily.
Thank you.